Hi, my name's Dee, and welcome to Sunchild Tarot, or more to the point, welcome to the second part of the Astrology of Darkseid. As we dig further into the chart, I have with me, of course, no, that side, I have with me, of course, astrologer David Fischer. Good morning, David. How are you doing?
Morning, Dee. I'm good. Good to be back.
Right, well, we're not going to waste time about why the chart of a fictional character. If you don't know why, there's an episode 1 to this. This is episode 2. The link for episode 1 will be down in the description below. As ever, there is the link for the Facebook page for the channel there. If you want to contact either myself or David, in fact, for a reading, me with the cards, him with the stars. Actually, we should use that as a tagline, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
But anyway, the Facebook page has an inbox down there. There's a link tree down there, so you can get me by email if you don't trust Facebook, because, hey, it's evil. And right, let's dive in. So you wanted to look this time at the Ascendant and Mercury.
Yeah, because last time we spent so much time talking about the moon, the fact that the moon is in a sixth, how it connects with Jupiter, which is its ruler. We talked also about the fact that Venus is in Scorpio. And I wanted to dive into that and explore a bit of what was proposed by Imaginary Axis video, which was that Darkseid actually has manifested in the multiverse that DC has created with multiple Earths and stuff as avatars. He didn't manifest as himself, primarily because he couldn't. And then I want to explore that possibility, as we have said before. If you haven't watched those videos and want to watch that to have a little bit more context about what we're talking about in regards to this theory, you can go there. But it's quite a valid theory, especially because it's based upon some very famous classical philosophical principles, such as the Platonic forms and idea and the world of ideas and stuff like that, or higher realms, as it is.
Of course, this idea of Darkseid manifesting in the various avatars only really became a more concrete thing, I think, 2005, around the time of Final Crisis, if you know your comics. So it's a recent addition, but it's something that the idea of the gods appearing as avatars and not showing their full immensity is an old idea anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very old idea. It's actually an idea that composes most of the cosmological models that base many religions that we have today, including Christianity, like that God lives in this, has these spiritual beings in all these different realms that are higher than our reality here on Earth. And even though that's true, you also have some form of higher manifestation of the spirits in our earthly bodies, in our earthly avatars, as you will. We are called the body of God. In a way, we are avatars of that same God. So it's not a new ideal by any means.
You could also relate it to the concept of the higher self, and how the higher self is sending avatars of itself through the reincarnation process, or all of those modern shapes.
Yeah, and how the other
same idea.
Yeah, and how another person, a peer of yours, will have the ability to connect you with another part of yourself that you don't see, because you're all part of the same essence, the same source material that manifests as both of you, as avatars of its unique and unified source. So Darkseid is basically the source idea for these avatars that we call Darkseid throughout the comic history, where it has been present. So this saying, even Darkseid is, as it's proposed in the Imaginary Axis videos, is very evocative of that ideal of being outside of our reality, of our temporality, right? Yeah, one key feature of our dimension is actually time, is one of the things that mainly compose our dimension in itself. So being outside of time is a key feature of these kinds of ideal beings. So what I want to look at in his chart here, if he's got, have you got it up on the screen already?
You want me to share?
Yeah.
And Let me just do a little bit of, no, that's completely the wrong button. There we go. You can tell we planned this, can't you? So share screen, that one, I hope. Here we go.
Right, thanks. So last time we were talking about how his Mercury was also going to contribute to that. So what we just described is the process of making yourself similar to something else that you can then use to represent you in a determined place or time where you cannot be present, right? Mercury is that process of assimilation that when you don't recognize something immediately, you look for other things that you already know to try and combine them and create a new image about that thing that's new on your field of awareness. So, which is the process of assimilating that new thing into your cognitive functions, into your consciousness, so it then becomes data, accessible data within your brain and within your memory. That's Mercury. Mercury therefore represents avatars, it represents messengers, it represents things that are meant to represent other things, symbols, such as Darkseid's appearances throughout the series. You see that Mercury exactly conjunct the ascendant in an air sign. Mercury is a signifier in essence of multiplicity, and you have the Venusian sign of Libra, which is also an air sign, also bringing up the multiplicity quality of air. So, and Uranus, obviously. Uranus breaks patterns. Uranus is a new way of integrating things. Every time Darkseid is manifest as one of his avatars in this reality, we can see a huge level of disruption of whatever ideals that society had at the time. He corrupts the ideals. He corrupts with his avatars the ideals, basically, the ideals behind everyone's motivation.
Just mentioning that whole Final Crisis storyline where he embedded that aspect of himself, where it had to be embedded within a pure soul for him to, as in Detective Dan Turpin, where he had to then manifest himself by corrupting that soul.
Yes. So you have this disruptive manifestation of avatars, and I hope you can see that I'm using here Uranian and Mercurial words. Mercury is also destabilizing. It is by its own nature questioning the order of things right now, so it can assimilate it. And the sun being in fall in the first house as well, accompanying that, speaks to the fact that Darkseid is trying to make everyone according to its own image, just like a primordial God image would want to, just like the Bible perhaps describes that God made humans as their own image. So these primordial figures, they're always trying to manifest in our own reality, so they are able to have the sense, the experience that we have in this reality, but according to their own essences of what they are. Darkseid is, and it's looking for us, and it's looking to assimilate everything else that is not Darkseid to itself. So, and we also have Saturn in a Venusian sign here, speaking to that impositivity of structure that's disruptive and even deadly, because we have the 8th house here as well. So, yeah. So we have Venus. Now, moving on to another subject, but still tied to that ascendant, the ruler of that angle is in a sign that's in what we call aversion to the ascendant. The aversion relationship between signs is that of indifference. it means that a determined planet that rules a determined house is not going to be able to provide to said house a proper care, so that whatever happens within that house will have a good outcome for the native. If it's in a good sign for it, the planet might actually still bring good manifestations, but they're not going to be by the native's own agency. They are going to be by other factors of circumstance that are not really satisfactory or intended by the native, perhaps. But if you have it in a bad sign, such as this Venus, a benefic planet in a bad sign, it corrupts, as we said in the last video, yes, and it gives that corrupt sense of orderness, of order. It also doesn't provide a clear manifestation of the ideals of the native themselves in the first house. So it's like, I have this idea of who I am and what I should be, but because of the circumstances, I'm not able to actualize what I want all the time. So, yeah.
Well, there's two ways, because you were saying one of the reasons for this aversion is that in the adjacent house, Venus cannot see the ascendant, is a phrase that I've heard you use. But also, if you look at the ascendant being Darkseid's story, and Venus is unable to see it and provide the care and the structure, is that also saying that there is an absence of love in Darkseid's story?
That's definitely a part of it, because
I can't believe I didn't see that bit before either.
Yeah, that's also like Venus is proper relationships. If you have it in a bad sign for it, it means that you don't have a healthy expression of that from off the bat. But we are not talking about a human here that can work on those significations. We're talking about a fictional character that's probably going to keep those primordial essences of those planets as pure as they can in their manifestation. At least that's how we are picturing it, and that's how we are presenting it here. So the fact that Venus doesn't see, can you hear me, Dave?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you froze for a moment. So the fact that Venus cannot see the first house means actually that whatever goals or whatever particular endeavors that Darkseid was trying to actualize and materialize in life, because the ruler of the final result, Venus, the ruler of the house, who determines what happens to it, is not seeing the ascendant, and it's also in a bad sign to it, this making everything one, which is a Venusian signification, this trying to unify society, even in your own twisted way of looking at it, will not go well for you. They will be failed attempts. And as we see in the comics, even though Darkseid's most really impressive villains don't really get too far, as far as to destroy everything, they seem to have destroyed everything sometimes, but they never do. Someone always comes and stops them. And that's expressed here, in my opinion, on the fact that Venus can't really look at that ascendant, and his avatars always end up being either destroyed or subjugated in any other way. It also speaks to the fact that Darkseid is falling into these realities, is falling into the multiverse as an essential being. There's this part in the videos from Imaginary Axis that he mentions that Darkseid kind of falls in one arc within this reality, suggesting that it always had been this figure outside these realities. And that caused much disruption and many of those avatars to pop up in our reality because of that falling into our reality. So you can say that by trying to fit himself to something that was not fit, that was not supposed to sustain such an essence, he caused disruption and disturbances in that reality, in all those realities, in that universe. And that's Uranus, Venus not being very well placed, producing twisted again significations of itself and of its ideals.
Venus itself is not well placed in the chart.
Venus itself is not, because it doesn't see the first house. It's in an aversion house. That's bad. It's in a malefic sign. That's also bad. And it's in its exile, as we call it, because it's opposite to its domicile, Taurus. So it's the furthest away from home it could be, which gives the native that sense of being rejected, of not being appropriate, of not belonging. All the Venusian significations are going to be twisted, are going to be reversed and made harmful to the native experience.
And Uranus?
Uranus is disruptive in nature. So if you're talking about a house that by its ruler won't have a clear or beneficial outcome for what the ruler wants, for what the native wants, you can expect that Uranus will be a lot of the disruptive factor that will play into it.
And I would imagine the nature of Uranus is not that happy in Libra anyway, because aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sign trying to bring harmony to things. How much harmony and consensus can you have when you have constant disruptions, right? It's like you're trying to have a court case with none of the organization, like a million witnesses coming up all at once in such a way that makes you have to, the circumstances make you have to redesign the whole court system because it's not fitting the current situation anymore, even though it had for centuries, you know, something like that.
Yeah, meanwhile, having an infestation of dancing clowns. I see what you mean.
Exactly. So you, and then we go from that Venus, which is not, even though it's a benefic planet and it has those unification qualities to it, we've already seen in the last video, and now with this one, with the aversion bit, how it's not really playing nice for the people that experience Darkseid's persona or personas as it manifests. But then we get the motivation behind that Venus and what's propelling that Venus. And we see Mars ruling Venus, ruling that Scorpio house, and Jupiter in Virgo, the 12th house, conjunct Pluto, which already gives you the hint that the motivation behind that unification impulse, that drive to make everyone bend to Darkseid's laws, in a way, an assimilation process, is motivated by hatred, all the Martian things, right? Hatred, a lack of understanding and willingness to understand that which is unlike you, right?
Yeah.
It is power struggles, because Mars is already about power, with Pluto is about what are the nasty shenanigans involved with that power dynamic. So Darkseid is the manifestation of corruption itself. And so you can see that by default, it will use corruption within power to manifest itself and use those manifestations as an entryway. It uses the corruption within people's souls, and it corrupts pure souls, so it can have a pure seed of itself in people's hearts. So it is disruptive. It is trying to bring something bad within people to the outside so it can manifest itself. It plays upon the deepest demons that someone has in their heads, right? Like a dementor, like depression, like all of these things that are very 12th housey. Demons, the house of bad spirit, of bad diamond. It feels like you're possessed by something, and Darkseid possesses things in order to manifest itself in our reality. And to gain power. And it's a power that doesn't seek only to change structures like Uranus or like Neptune to try and make everything one with it. It's an annihilating figure that wants to destroy absolutely everything and wants to make it anew in its own image.
as we discussed with everything that's going on in his 7th house, didn't we? The descendant and moon going into 7th and 6th house.
I don't remember that bit.
Well, if we remember, we was talking about the moon at the 29 degrees 52 minutes.
Yes.
But in the 6th house, just below the horizon, being a house of sickness, a house of things going down into darkness. And I just noticed that is that Chiron there, just on top of the descendant, which I've no idea really how to interpret that, apart from it just looks really significant.
If it were a person, you could say that this person's deepest hurts, they were caused by people who they saw as allies at first, as people that could mirror themselves to them. So they identified with the wrong people and thus got a self-hating image that manifests as bitterness towards everyone else. This is one possible worst case scenario manifestation of this chart. So if you have that placement, don't think that this is a reality of your life. This is just an extreme manifestation. But why am I giving this particular example to base my argument? Because this is Darkseid we're talking about. So he's the primordial hurt principle. He's the primordial anger that rises from injustice kind of principle. So it does make sense that by default, this sense of trying to control things also has to do with the way that primordially this being sees everything else to be a threat to its own integrity and something that hurts its own principle of being by existing, because it's so infamous, it's so ephemeral that it offends me in a way.
Yeah.
And that offense that the other does to me that I cannot forgive because it's against what I see myself as, you know?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
That's as deep as I want to go with it. But yeah, it has to do with it.
So anything more about the Mars and Pluto?
Well, nothing apart from the fact that it also will give more of that I need to control things and validation to do so. So you would have all these other gods, all these other anti-hero characters giving support to Darkseid so it can manifest. The circumstances are malefic enough so that Darkseid can come through, right? There was something about the empty-handed being the one, the empty-handed. Mercury, hands. This is someone who doesn't take action to impede that bad things happen and thus allows Darkseid to manifest again in this realm, as you can see through Imaginary Axis videos. And that image of the empty-handed implying, as the video suggests, that the public wants Darkseid to come back in the image of any other villain, because you want an anti-hero. You want these heroes to keep going through struggle so you can keep yourself entertained. So in a way, you as a god are causing their suffering because you want to see them fighting their own demons amongst themselves, because that allows you to have a direct window to your own demons in your own soul in a way, and makes you more aware of your own internal dynamics. But that's maybe subject to another video. This is just to illustrate how Darkseid is a concept rather than a full-on character like a human person would be. And that's why this natal chart could fit so well, as we said in the last video, to describe what's happening to it along its history as a character. But perhaps we couldn't time things as perfectly in this chart as we would in a person's chart, because it's not a human living through time. It's an idea, it's a concept.
Even for the more human fictional characters, there would be a difference, because, as you say, Darkseid is a concept, or as they say, plainly, Darkseid is. Whereas with the more human fictional characters, Spider-Man, he's Well, no, actually, he hasn't died that I can think of, but he's had his life rearranged. He's got married. He's yeah, okay, Superman died. But Spider-Man, he lost one girlfriend, he got married to another, then they got divorced, then there's character progression
They're much more
as it's written over the years, whereas Darkseid purely is because he is his natal promise. That is his sum totality.
Kind of his prerogative in a way.
Yeah. So tell me more about that Saturn now that you've pointed it out to me, because that's fascinating. That it's they're limiting the Venus as well.
Yes, you see both malefics. One is opposed to the moon, which is the luminary of the sect, and it's Mars. And the other one is opposed to Venus, both by sign. They're not exact by degree, but they're very close. So
which is just another expression of, you know, like I said, that point with the rulership, and to a certain extent, whether you're using modern or ancient rulerships, apart from that Uranus, because of course Uranus, but it doesn't matter what rulership you use, they conform to Darkseid's will and not the other way around.
Which is quite interesting, yes. You do see both malefics opposite to these important planets in Darkseid's chart that really determine how its spirit is going to come through in a way, and it's going to come through oppositions and through difficulties and all these significations brought on by the malefics that are contrary to life, Saturn and Mars, into his expression. Every time a Darkseid comes up, it's going to come up through those conflictuous aspects, the opposition between Saturn and Mars to those particular planets.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that particular malefics opposing each benefic. That,
yeah,
I mean,
and
that is beautiful.
It just reinforces the ideal that we're speaking to of Darkseid having everyone else as other than him, you know?
So what about the nodes? Do the nodes say anything? Because I noticed they look like they're 0 degrees.
I would only speak to the nodes as far as they represent the instability of these characters and how they are not images that can be sustained forever. And he has to switch tactics and switch bodies all the time. And that's North Node co-present with his moon in a bad house. So his physical manifestations are always very challenged, and it's quite unstable in nature because it's trying to sustain a much literally larger than life type of personality. So the instability of the nodes in that sense, I would bring in just to add to the whole scenario.
So in summation, even as he is the great adversary to a great extent, even as he is also the very embodiment of corruption and of opposition, he is so much a icon, or icon is probably the wrong word, archetype of opposition, that he even manages to oppose himself in his own chart. Because with the malefics against the benefics in both times, as much as that is describing what his nature is, it also is very much describing his failure.
Yes, precisely.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And just because I haven't said it on this one yet, how does this work? How? But I hope that everybody can see why I was so blown away by this chart, even if I can't read it to the extent that you do, David. There's have we got more to look at, like individual aspects, or we've pretty much covered that in all the conversations we've had, haven't we?
Yeah, I think going too much into this chart, too much further into this chart, would start a realm of speculating what could have influenced parts of the specific parts of this story. and that could be subject of more in-depth research by some astrologers like Darren, who I think is going to develop some kind of research in this field of modern mythology in the future.
Absolutely. I've already got my plans with looking at how the Darkseid character has been used over time, and just noticing transits, progressions, all sorts of things, if it says anything. Now, I would expect normally in a rational world, no, it wouldn't say a thing. But this chart flies in the face of that argument, really. So I am looking forward to just diving into that and finding out, and I'll come back in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
Because it'll probably take that long.
Right.
Right. Thank you very much, David. Readings. Tell people about them, your readings.
Oh, yeah, I offer readings, horary, lectional. I'm still studying those two, but I offer in-depth natal readings. You can access any part of your past, present, and look how the tendencies for the future, therefore, are looking to you, for you. And I do those consultations from any part of the world you are in through the internet, as we are doing now, me and Darren. And so just contact him, or go through my Instagram page and contact me through there at David Fischer Astrology. David Fischer Astrology, actually. Yeah.
Right. All the details will be down in the description down below. I thought I'd best show Darkseid just for the sake of him making an actual appearance here. In fact, let me start screen sharing so we're not just in a tiny corner. Yeah, so here we are. Here's Darkseid, of course, who was supposed to be living on there, but I forgot to put him there before we set up. Thank you very much for this, David. I intend to pursue this line of thought quite a lot. So as I get to know more about the astrology, you can expect to see more superhero stroke villain chart readings, maybe.
Cool.
I might recruit you for another one yet until I know what I'm
doing. I love to do it.
So thank you very much, people. Do come tuned for next readings. Of course, the next big event is the full moon, isn't it? So the Saturday before the full moon, we'll be live streaming again, 6 p.m. UK time, hopefully, because I have a medical thing going on beforehand. So if I can talk on the Saturday, we'll be live streaming. If not, you will probably see a video of me and David together where I'm just like, and then David answers me in words you can understand.
Okay.
But thank you very much, everybody. And yeah, comment down below. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.